Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to War in the Pacific Admirals Edition for our play-by-email game against XTRG. We're playing as the Allies, XTRG is playing as the Japanese, and we're about to look at the combat results from the January 11th turn, and then we will be issuing our orders for our January 12th turn. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. It's been a little bit since I've opened this up. I've been playing a lot of Rule the Waves lately, so I kind of lost track of everything that's going on in the game. Not everything, but just some of the stuff. Like a G-Man, I think we have a few allied supporters on Tortuga Discord. I don't have a ton over on XTRG's side. But definitely Tortuga's end has some people rooting for us. So, I mean, you can go over to Tortuga's Discord if you're ever looking for some War in the Pacific chat over there as well. Meanwhile, you can see the turns getting underway. January 11th, 42. Some ships being spotted in the Solomons, which is no surprise. We know that the Japanese took those recently. Meanwhile, Japanese cruisers continue to bombard our forces in Kaigan, where I'm trying to remember, did we attack the Japanese last turn, or are we attacking them this turn? I can't quite remember. But it looks like he's continuing to bombard, which is interesting because I don't know how much ammunition he would really have left at this point. He's been bombarding for a few days. You can see a few coastal guns fired in defense, a few casualties. Not much, but there's sort of continued action going on in that area. Okay, so some task forces reacting. Nothing that we can really see. I think that was an ASW task force, so maybe it's reacting to sink an enemy. Meanwhile, we just lost a cargo ship that was damaged during the air raids on Balikpapan. It just sank at the port, so we had been trying to send it south to Surabaya in the Dutch East Indies to try and get it out of harm's way, but that appears to have failed. Meanwhile, we have some Dutch submarines which we did order into Kaigan in an effort to try and get some torpedoes on the Japanese heavier ships that are bombarding our forces there. They fired torpedoes at a Japanese submarine. They failed to hit the submarine, and now they're under depth charge attack. Looks like they only got minor damage there, so they launched the torpedoes they missed, but they didn't end up getting sunk or anything, so that's a good result for us. Meanwhile, apparently temporary repairs are failing on board the Prince of Wales on its way to the South African port at Cape Town, so we'll have to check that out. She suffered a lot of damage. Our battleships have finally arrived. They've just gotten to Midway. Two of our battleships, survivors of Pearl Harbor, just over a month away, are using their heavy artillery and their shells to bombard against Japanese forces on the island of Midway. This is somewhat of a diversionary action. It's to make XTRG kind of think. It's to get our crews a little bit of experience firing their weapons at an enemy target, and perhaps score a couple of cheap victory points if we destroy any enemy squads on the base as well. In addition, it should, if he had any aircraft there, it should destroy them or at least knock the airfield out of action. I'm not really seeing any explosions, any secondaries, just a lot of shells being fired by the Nevada and then the Oklahoma. We've also got our destroyers closing in to as close as 1,000 yards because we're assuming he doesn't have much in the way of coastal defenses there. All in all, not a ton happened. We did destroy one non-combatant squad, so I think that's one victory point. But other than that, spent a lot of ammo. We did do some damage to the runway, 32 hits, 13 port hits, 1 port supply hit, 1 airbase supply hit, 13 airbase hits. So some damage done to the island's facilities itself. But overall, nothing that really matters a whole lot, other than to maybe get into XTRG's head. Okay. Yeah, we spent a lot of ammunition to earn 1 victory point. Right, No Name? But we had been bombarding Midway with aircraft as well. So again, just sort of adding a cumulative sort of impact, hopefully, to the soldiers that are getting hit there. And again, really just about making the island less effective for him, making him spend resources, time, effort, and making him think about things. Meanwhile, 2 Japanese AMCs here close in on Comac. There's a surface engagement. We had sent some patrol gunboats and a cruiser mine layer to Comac, and it looks like the 2 ship groups engaged, and then both task forces decided, you know what? I don't like the odds of this. Let's get out of here. The mine layer is withdrawing after combat to Sydney. Meanwhile, aircraft being spotted sort of in the South Pacific. I would only imagine the only realistic option there is if we're detecting Japanese bombers near Suva or Mar. That's got to be Japanese carrier aircraft. Meanwhile, Zeros are running sweeps out of Kota Baru by the looks of it against forces toward Kuala Lumpur and further south. The Japanese do have a free road south to Johor Bahru, just north of Singapore. So that's something that we have to be sort of cognizant of. Okay, some Sally bombers hitting Wengkao. Some more Sally bombers hitting Wengkao. Now, if you remember, I'm trying to remember. Let's take a look here, actually. We've got some bombers that are hitting some targets here in Battambang in Thailand. Or actually, is that Thailand? French Indochina, whatever modern-day country equivalent that was. I think it's Thailand. It's just west of Vietnam. Japanese carrier dive bombers here. 17 Vals are closing in on a couple, it looks at least one cargo ship here to the southeast of Nomaya. The Silksworth is being hit by multiple enemy bombs, and it looks like also the AK American. So he's trying to bomb a cargo ship named the American, the Dardanus. Again, 17 dive bombers, all doing quite a bit of damage, I would imagine. Not as much, I guess. 6 bomb hits on the Silkworth, heavy damage. She's going to sink. The American and the Dardanus both took 1 bomb hit and are on fire. And that's expended 25 AM for... Wait, he's got Claudes on board as carriers? That's odd. Why would you have Claudes doing your escorts on carriers? That's... If we had any fighters nearby, that would be asking for trouble. And 17 Vals, so at least he burned 42 sorties of his supply. Alright, the Silkworth sinks. That's to be expected. More Val recon are spotting the American and the Dardanus. Lots of recon spotting that same task force. So, whatever. I think that was just a small cargo ship task force, so if he does finish it off, that's fine. We had a couple of much larger convoys, but they're further south in the South Pacific, so I think they're relatively safe from his raids, at least this turn. Like a G-Man, he definitely has Zeros. It's just a question of where he put them. I don't think that's a light carrier, though. I didn't look to see what the air wing was. Because, I mean, we haven't seen any light carriers in the South Pacific. We have seen the Kirubutai, so my assumption is just a small subset of planes that he had flying out of there. Meanwhile, our own carrier, the Yorktown, continues its raid on Midway with 45 more planes, 30 Dauntlesses and 15 Devastators going in to hit the island after it had been bombarded by our battleships. So we'll go ahead and fast forward through this. These 45 aircraft, wow! These 45 aircraft inflicted 208 casualties. Perhaps casualties are amplified because the island had been hit by our bombardment group, so maybe they were, you know, already in a state of exposure. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, no squads destroyed, but a lot of non-combatants and regular squads disabled, so hopefully that'll eat up some of his supply and force him to divert, again, resources. Looks like they were bombing the 24th Infantry Regiment and the 53rd Naval Guard unit. So he's got a reasonable number of troops on the island, but 208 casualties, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a pretty successful raid. Like a G-Man, I think our tanker force is way further south, but I could be wrong. We'll double check. I try to prevent ever having a truly huge tanker force. For that very eventuality, in the event that we do run into something unexpected. 1 or 2 tanker losses is bad, but not the end of the world. But if we lost like 10 of them because we concentrated them too much, that would be really bad. So I try to avoid sending huge tanker convoys. Meanwhile, more Japanese troops are coming ashore at Kaigun. 105mm artillery round fired into self-defense, it looks like. Unfortunately, it missed. And is that really the end of the turn? This is a pretty uneventful turn. We spotted some Japanese carriers in the South Pacific trying to raid some shipping, but other than that, not a lot. Some deliberate attacks here to the northeast of Wuchao. The 30th Infantry Division attacked some Chinese forces there that are now going to retreat toward Luochao. 4-1 assault odds, 2,800 Allied casualties. 3 units retreated, but that's basically a corps destroyed there in terms of the combatant squads lost. He lost 204 casualties, so not much there. Meanwhile, a Japanese shock attack with 4th Independent Mixed Regiment at Pakoi. We don't have any defenders there, so that'll fall to them. So Pakoi falls to the Japanese. That's the last, well, second to last coastal city in China still under our control. For whatever reason, the Japanese continue to bombard at Kuotan rather than attacking the base itself, so they fail to take it. And then they take Kuala Lumpur, so he's finally moving south in the Malay Peninsula, and he's now closing in on Singapore. It looks like he has some land forces here further south at Malacca as well. So he took Kuala Lumpur, and he sent an SNLF force. I wonder if he landed these troops. I don't know how they got here, but he took Kuala Lumpur, and he took Malacca. So just like that, he's closing in and extremely close to Johor Bahru, and could easily be at the gates of Singapore in 2 or 3 days. I don't know. SNLF forces aren't paratroopers, so I don't know how they got there. That seems a little bit strange. But I guess we'll have to see. Okay. Calculating spoilage. Aircraft supply phase. Upgrading ships. Coming to an AI smart speaker near you. The historical gamer's voice. Don't worry, it'll be like some cheap-ass, you know, bargain bin, like off-brand that you've never heard of before. All right, so that's going to do it for the combat phase of the turn. You can see a bunch of cargo ships are arriving, and we got a couple of P-40 fighter squadrons arriving in Australia, so that'll help. And then let's go ahead and jump back into the game. The cherry blossoms fall on you. Okay. It's Tortuga power. Hey, Tortuga. How you doing? How are you enjoying war in the Pacific so far? All right, so we are in January 12th, 42. Looks like Japan lost 7 aircraft op losses, 1 destroyed by flak. We lost 4 aircraft ops. In terms of aircraft lost, the Japanese lost 2 Lilies, 1 Thale, 1 Sonia, 1 Oscar, 1 Babs, 1 Alf, 1 Zero. We lost 1 Dauntless, 1 Catalina, 1 Wildcat, 1 Lodestar. It just kind of got fun to repeat that. Meanwhile, list aircraft destroyed. If you remember, we lost a P-40 squadron at sea last turn. That's a weird way to structure the date. And we lost 25 P-40Bs that turn on the Chattanooga City. So apparently, we can go ahead and right-click and see the air group, which is that. And then we can go ahead and right-click to reactivate. I don't know how much political points that costs. Spend 125 political points to rebuild the 18th Pursuit Group. And it takes anywhere between 30 to 180 days? No! That's a lot of fucking political points. Are they all 125? That's a lot of political points to rebuild an air unit. I mean, they're valuable units. Don't get me wrong. But I don't want to spend that much. That's like unlocking a regiment, almost. We'll have to reconsider that. Pilots, we lost 1 KIA this turn. Nothing all that important. Let's go ahead and check out Prince of Wales. I know we said that she was suffering some flotation damage. Flotation repairs were failing. So if we go over here, we can see... Nope, that is not the Prince of Wales. Is it here? Yes. So the Prince of Wales flotation damage just increased from 51 to 53. She's still... What is that? She's moving at 2 hexes per phase. I think. M is movement, right? 1 is cost, or is 2 maximum, 1's cruise. In that case, she's going to take like a month. In any event, she's going to take near on a month to get to Cape Town. So let's hope that she doesn't suffer too much more damage on her way there. You can see the major flood damage is still maxed out at 51, the engine damage of 38. But the flood damage did increase from 51 to 53 this turn. That's not anything too worrisome. With the system damage where it's at, they can certainly repair that back down to 51, as long as we don't sprinter or anything like that. Yeah, so it's only moving 1 hex per phase, so 2 hexes per day, which means about 28 days until she arrives. Jesus, and she's going to take like a year or more to repair. Prince of Wales is basically out of this thing for quite some time. But anyway, that's the Prince of Wales right now. I think we had some other ships moving around in this area. Looks like we got some tankers on the way to Oosthaven. These tankers, these 5 tankers that we have at Oosthaven are loading up fuel. They got a little bit more than halfway loaded up. One of the tankers, the Iris, which has a very small fuel stock, is all the way loaded. The other guys are around 50% for the most part of their total capacity of 25,000. They've got about 10,000 loaded up. There's another 26,000 in the port, and then we can see here that the Palembang port has 46,000 fuel. So we're rapidly depleting the fuel that he has there. We've loaded 27,000 fuel on board the tankers here at Palembang, and these guys are going to be sprinting the hell out of there as soon as they're totally full up. It looks like 3 of the tankers are full. We've got 2 more tankers which are part of the way full, and that actually, you know what, rather than take the risk, I think what we'll do is we're going to form a new task force, a new tanker task force. We're going to pull one of the destroyers here, and then we're going to take all the other 3 tankers which are already full up from fuel and can't fit anything more, and we're going to send them as their own independent task force toward Perth at flank speed just for the next day. Basically, the 1 day of flank speed should get them out of enemy air cover, and then we can switch them back over to cruise speed. They've got a destroyer with them, so that should help with any potential enemy submarines. And then we're going to see swing here to the east. More of his submarines are focused in the strait between Batavia and Oosthaven, so by heading a little bit further east, hopefully we avoid the bulk of his submarine threat, and then these guys will move out. So those 3 tankers that we're sending immediately have 24,000 fuel. The remaining tankers, which are still at Palembang and are docked up, can carry an additional 17,000 fuel, so they've got about 3,000 loaded up, so 14,000 more, which will bring the fuel stocks down to about 53,000. Plus, remember, we're continuing to drain fuel south to Oosthaven. And then maybe we'll start trying to turn the refineries back on if we get this low enough to try and get some of that oil processed over to fuel. That being said, that's probably still a little bit of a ways away. Also, with him taking Malacca and especially Kuala Lumpur, if he moves his aircraft forward, that's really going to shut Palembang down very promptly with air cover. So we've got to get these ships, we got to get these tankers out of here as fast as possible. With the fall of Kuala Lumpur, he's probably going to move air units in, if not to Kuala Lumpur. The only question is if he has support units for the air units yet. Probably not, would be my assumption. Oh shit, he cut off the 3rd ISF base force. I mean, not that it really matters. They basically are a phantom unit here, but interesting. On the flip side, did we cut him off? Huh. I'm not sure about that. What about our troops moving out of Mersing? They've moved about 17 miles. Okay. They're moving directly south to Johor Bahru. That Indian brigade. Let's see here. All right, I don't want to leave Singapore totally empty. This brigade is busy recouping its losses. The main question is what he can race that way. He's got to move 2 hexes south still. I don't think he can paradrop. Doesn't matter. I mean, we've got a direct road to Johor Bahru. But I'd prefer... the anti-tank guns I don't want to move because those are going to be valuable against Japanese tanks. I'm surprised these guys aren't moving faster, the armored units. We're going to move this 1 infantry unit west just to block his advance a little bit. Okay. Not much of Batavia. We've got 8 light cruisers, so I mean, we've got something, but not a lot. The carriers pulled back to port. They'll dock, replenish from port. No more fuel, really. We drained all the fuel out of the island of Java. I mean, we've got a pretty decent amount of fuel, but it looks like we literally sucked all the fuel out of Surabaya. No fuel there. Batavia has some. Or is it Batvia? I'm not really sure. I think it's Batavia. I always pronounced it Batavia. These guys are moving west. So his light carriers are his light carriers headed back to Balikpapan? Because these are the CVLs. You know, all these guys already got 6,000 fuel out of Balikpapan. We got the fuel down to under 30,000 available there. These guys are headed to Cairns. 21,000 fuel headed to Cairns. Perth, 10,000 fuel. Where are these guys going? Oh, we were going to use them to shuttle supplies, weren't we? Let's see here. These guys are going to Oosthaven, that's fine. 6 heavy AAs headed to Australia. 25,000 headed to Perth. Yeah, don't do that. Go to Oosthaven. There's no reason for your aircraft to go that way. Okay. We probably should move the cruisers somewhere else. I just don't know where. You know, there is a chance we might want to use them in combat should an opportunity present itself. They don't have really heavy guns. They don't have great... I mean, some of them have decent torpedoes. But, like, I don't know what I'm going to do with 8 light cruisers. These even have radars? C-class... or E-class. C-class. 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 These are all World War I era, right? Oh, there's one. The D-classes have radars. The Dragon, the Diane, or the Dane, or however you pronounce it. I guess it's probably a good idea to get them out of there. It's just a question of where to. I don't really have any other bases. I don't know if I want to withdraw them back to India. It'd be interesting to have them like charge forward on the Japanese the Japanese carriers. Is that something we want to do? I don't remember. Did he have a battleship with this light carrier task force? If he did, that's probably not a super wise move. But if he didn't, pair the 8 light cruisers together with the Hermes task force, pull the warships out of the Hermes. I guess we'll pull these back to Surabaya. I mean, there's too many ships to pair them with the Hermes in the sense that, like, it just, you lose efficiencies there. But I do wonder if, you know, if we had 2 heavy cruisers and like 12 light cruisers charging in on a Japanese task force, it's a lot of torpedoes. Maybe someone would hit. You know, there's an off chance you'd sink a light carrier if you can get close enough. Of course, there's a much greater likelihood that you get your ass sunk, which is another thing to be aware of. Okay, so Malay Peninsula, we've already got our troops ordered to fall back from Mersing to Johor Bahru. Question is how quickly he can move troops from Malacca to Johor Bahru. I don't think he can cut us off because these two are adjacent, so even if he shows up, I'm pretty sure those troops would get back. It would be pretty bad if it didn't. It would be a very quick sort of capitulation of Singapore if that's the case, but I don't think that will be the case. Meanwhile, if we move north to China, we can see that he did have that one unit that got into the rear of Luoyang, but we also had some other troops that were on the way there, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to switch these guys over to a deliberate attack to try and drive these Japanese troops back. We don't know how strong his troops are in this area. My hope is that it's a light armor unit that can't withstand an attack from, you know, a couple hundred or 150 assault value. You know, tanks are good on shock attack, but not so good on defense. So my hope is this might be like an armored unit. That would make the most sense, how he quickly raced behind us, basically in like 2 turns. But we'll see. Meanwhile, the rest of our force is still ordered to withdraw. The concern is if he attacks us again this turn, then they're going to be in really bad position to receive an attack. The concern is if he doesn't attack us, then we substantially slow ourselves down. We're moving at about, I think, 11 miles a day. If we switch into combat mode, they'll slow down to 6. So, you know, we could be out of here in 3 days if he doesn't attack. We could be out of here in 1 if he attacks and we're in move, but we get routed and badly mauled. So we just kind of have to, I'm not sure. I'll probably decide that off screen. That's kind of the main thing in China right now. Looks like he's bringing more troops into Wencao. We're starting to run low on supply there. He's starting to hit us from the air pretty hard. But we're still hanging in there. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, he has not moved on Bataan yet. We've got quite a strong force here in Bataan itself with quite a lot of supplies. 53,000 supplies. And we just got to level 4 fortifications. So that is a very strong position for us to be holding. Honestly, I think I'm going to stop building fortifications at this point. Level 5 forts will take even longer. I think that'll take like almost 2 months. Maybe not. Maybe 2 weeks to get there. Maybe 3 weeks, actually, based off my math, to get to level 5 fortifications. But it'll also take a lot of time. It'll also take a lot of supply. So I don't really want to waste the supply. I'm going to kind of husband my resources, if you will. And I think units in rest mode use less supply. So I'm actually going to turn everybody over to rest, with the exception of the anti-aircraft units, or the engineer units, which we're going to keep in a combat mode. So let's do this. Let's do the engineers. Mainly to try and preserve supplies so that we can hang out here as long as possible. And then also the anti-aircraft units. Coastal Defense 2. I'm assuming the artillery units in general have some AA guns. But the actual infantry units are going to switch over to rest. The headquarters will stay in combat. But the infantry units here will switch to rest, and my hope is that means they'll consume less supplies. But I'm not really sure if that's true or not. That's just my hope. Additionally, speaking of supplies, we do have a small task force here that is making a run, one final supply run perhaps for Bataan with 1,700 supply on it. You can see the carriers got in behind them, but these guys are out on their way to Bataan. I think we'll also load these guys up with supply. Whoop. No, don't load fuel. These guys, yeah, these guys will load 600 supply. They'll move to Bataan as well. They'll also move at flank speed. There's no way they can make it there in flank. God, these guys are so slow. So inefficiently slow. But if it can load up, maybe we'll get another 600 supply. Mainly it's just trying to keep putting more and more supply into Bataan so that it can hang out as long as possible. Because right now it still has over 50,000 supply, which is quite a lot. Okay. Meanwhile, we've got this line of subs. If he does approach Balikpapan, we do have these fighters over Balikpapan. I think I'm actually going to switch these guys over to an 80% cap for all the fighters at the base. Because we've got 34 fighters if he does want to come at us here. Might catch him off guard. I don't think he knows we have that many fighters here. And we have good aviation support too. Oh, no, we don't. All right, well, we're going to burn these aircraft out pretty damn fast. But we can surge them to one turn at heavy heavy usage like that. This Buffalo group is from the guys down at Balikpapan, I think. Yep. So they'll merge in down there. Some of these other guys are starting to run low on fuel, or run low on supply. Meanwhile, how'd that Dutch sub fare? It took a hit, right? Alright, so they're fine. And we'll continue trying to go after these cruisers or whatever here. Move some of these subs down here to engage with the Japanese carrier task force in the event that they get a lucky shot. They are Dutch subs, so they do have working torpedoes. Okay. The ship's under repair. The cargo ship Elenga will be completed tomorrow. Meanwhile, the two submarines that are being worked on have 4 and 3 days respectively. Hopefully his bombers don't show up before then. Kind of wondering if it might be a good idea to surge our cap this turn. Now that he took those bases, that might be the next place he hits. We'll have to see. Meanwhile, supply, we've got 49,000 in Singapore. We've been shuttling a little bit of supply over from Palembang. So we just dropped 4,000 more supply on the Munlok. And then the Black Hawk loading up some supply. Be heading back with 2,000 supply to Singapore at flank speed in the next day or so. Okay. Didn't these B-17s get ordered to do nothing? Yeah, they are ordered to stand down. I don't know why they're suffering damage. Demons. These fighters? I can't remember. Yes, they are. Move these to Surabaya, since that's where our carriers are. You know, we're going to pull some more aircraft back. I've got too many aircraft forward deployed. At this base. Some of these Hawks back to Batavia as well. Pull some aircraft out of Palembang. We don't have anywhere near enough aviation support for Palembang at the moment. Nine aviation support, 36 aircraft. Everybody's set to stand down, so hopefully that lets us get back on top of that. Do I plan on defending Singapore for a long time, like Corregidor? Battling Geezer, I plan to defend Singapore for a long time if I can manage to defend Singapore for a long time. I'm not 100% sure that we can succeed at that, but that is our goal. All right, so moving to the South Pacific, we did have that one cargo task force here, which is probably a goner. You can see the Dardanus and the American both suffered some damage. You can see the Japanese Kirubutai is moving southeast, so they're moving this direction. Meanwhile, these guys, it's another task force that's not so great. Depending on how quickly he moves and how far south he moves, he may collide with us there. Let's move these guys at flank, try and get them into port before Japanese arrive. These guys are already unloading. Might make sense to disband them into the port before he shows up. How much fuel is here? 240. We have the Monterey and the Matosina, two valuable cargo ships. I just don't think they can get out in time. I just stripped fuel from that task force, which is currently docked, to load these cargo ships up. These are fast transports. These are very valuable troop ships. The question is if he's going for Suva or not. I don't think he is. But honestly, it's probably better for these guys to disband in the port, because if he's not going for Suva this turn, we want to make sure of that. Oh, wow. They were able to pull the fuel off of the tanker, even though it hadn't really unloaded much yet? Huh. It's not a AO. I wouldn't have thought they could do that, but it does look like they stripped it directly out of the tanker. Well, in that case, we should probably form a new task force of cargo ships, too. These guys who are out of cargo or out of fuel. Go ahead and replenish task force at sea. These guys can still move. So we'll go ahead and retreat these guys to Pago Pago at flank speed. Okay. All right, so we've almost pulled all the fuel out of the Gulf King. Hopefully that allows it to kind of finish dropping fuel. It also ensures that we don't leave a whole bunch of fuel for him behind. I think maybe we are going to send one of these transports by itself at flank speed, the one with the most ops points. It's fine. Doesn't need fuel. We're going to send it to Pago Pago to get it out of the way. We're going to send it at flank speed. We're also going to set task force to direct, so it goes to the most direct route possible. Are there any other ships we want to transfer to it? We'll leave the Dewey with the tanker. So we'll just take the risk that a 22 knot troop transport won't be easily able to be knocked out. And if he's moving this way, we'll see if he actually picks up on this guy. This guy's going to Nadi, so that's a single cargo ship. That's an appealing target. These tankers are falling back to Pago. Should be safe for at least a turn. These tankers are heading south to New Zealand. Southeast does kind of move them on a collision course, but they are moving relatively quickly. So they'll be moving 3 hexes per phase. So 1, 2, 3. Before daylight, they'll be here. 1, 2, 3. By the end of the turn, they'll be here. So I think there's enough range between these guys to be safe. Meanwhile, our cruisers are falling back in Auckland. This massive troop transport convoy is going to divert to Wellington to get way south of the Japanese carriers over there. And then we'll just divert them as far south as we can go on the map to stay well clear of his raids. Okay. Are these guys all damaged? The Pensacola isn't. Let's try this. Let's take these lesser damaged ships. We're going to send them a little bit further north to Sydney to join the other heavy cruiser up there. And then we can have a 2 heavy cruiser task force at Sydney, perhaps to operate against the Japanese near Comac. If his carriers are really going to head southeast, he may be leaving these troops here at Comac a little bit exposed. So that's a thing. Also, we'll pull these guys back. Meanwhile, we're going to keep moving our subs south in the event that he decides he wants to come north. Hopefully he runs into our subs. No retirement allowed there. No retirement allowed there. So those subs are going to swing south in the sea lanes between Tana and Nomaya, so that if he does pull his carriers back the direction he came, they may run directly into some submarines. Pike is still falling back. Looks like she's going to make it, though. Her damage has dropped a bit. These subs are heading to Truk, hopefully to get between the Japanese battleship task force and Truk, because I'm assuming that's where he's falling them back. He's going to have to fall them back somewhere to get repairs. More fun if he ran into a reef? I mean, sure. I wouldn't mind it. Not quite. I don't think how the game works, but yeah. I'd be 100% okay with that. Meanwhile, these troop transports are falling back to Hawaii, so that's good. Getting them out of harm's way. What else is here? Transport. All right. So we're going to follow these troop transports back as well, getting them out of harm's way. Wouldn't be a bad idea to have a destroyer with them. Okay. All right, so they're going to fall back to Pearl. Let's route them a little bit better, though. I'm going to route them directly east. I don't want them running into anything out of Canton Island. Shows they have enough fuel moving at mission speed, so even though their fuel's a little bit low, it does show they have enough. Actually, some of my units don't have all that much in the way of ops points, so maybe we should actually do that. This replenishment task force, I think, just lost a lot of its oil to that task force, so that's good. As much as I can use the fuel that's being transported without creating a massive stockpile on the front lines that he might be able to take, the better. These guys are a little bit too close for comfort. You might be sending them on a collision course, too. You know what? I think it's just better to follow these guys back to Auckland, just directly south, out of his way. Because, again, Intel says he's moving southeast, which is this way. So go the opposite direction with that task force. Okay. Hey, Cannibal Clown. Turned into a reef, yeah. So what happens when a ship sinks, right? All right, so these battleships bombarded Midway. Now they're returning to port at Pearl Harbor. Used about half of their ammo up, which is fine. They're still moving at full speed. We'll switch them over to mission speed. I think they're relatively safe. Meanwhile, we'll have the carriers fall back to Last Sign Island this turn. And then we'll probably pull them back more quickly following turn. What else is going on? We've got troop transports unloading at Johnston Island, increasing its defensive capabilities. Now we've got 2 Marine Defense Battalions and the Johnston Island Defense Battalion. So he'd have to have a reasonably strong force there to try and take that island. Like a regiment would do it, but we're hoping he doesn't have a regiment. Plus it's an atoll, so we almost have the island max stacked. Okay. Palmyra could be a little bit vulnerable to an SNLF force, but it does have a Marine Defense Battalion there. The Christmas Island's pretty vulnerable, too. We've got a pretty large tanker force hanging out here at Christmas Island. I don't think there's really anything else going on this turn to really look at all that much. We've got some anti-submarine warfare patrols moving around. Got some tankers leaving Los Angeles. But overall, not a lot else going on this turn. So we'll see what happens. We're pulling our carriers back to Pearl Harbor. The Saratoga Task Force has arrived, and we're going to disband them at port just so they can get their stuff repaired. We'll disband this cargo task force as well. This sub-patrol needs to repair itself, 8 system damage. And the replenishment task force is unloading as well. Or it's loading, I guess. All right, so how long is it going to take the Saratoga to repair her damage? She mainly just has system damage from working. Looks like it's going to take 10 days. Can we speed that up? Yeah. If we set it to critical, we can make it happen in 3 days, which is good because the other carriers are returning via a roundabout way in this direction, and the Enterprise needs some tending to too. Additionally, once the Yorktown gets back, then what we'll probably do is package these carriers together and maybe move them to Australia. I'm guessing the Kido Butai will be gone by that point in time, so that's something to consider. Meanwhile, these guys are going to Brisbane to unload their fuel, and this tanker force is already unloading its fuel at Townsville. These guys are unloading their fuel at Geraldton. Got another 5,000 coming in there. These guys are going back to Oosthaven. This tanker's heading east. So, yeah. All right, guys. Not a super active turn. Not a ton going on this turn. Obviously, the big development on the Malayan Peninsula, and then the big questions of what's going to happen in China over here, because we've got about 100,000 soldiers at Luoyang, which are cut off. If we can't break them out, that's going to be a problem. So we'll have to see what happens this next turn. But until this next turn, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you guys for tuning in once more. And until next time, I'm going to go ahead and sign out.